Hey everybody, Jason Bermas here for WeAreChange.org. And Pennsylvania was rocked earlier this week when a grand jury report of almost 900 pages detailed the abuse of over 1,000 children spanning 7 decades by over 300 priests. And for those out there that don't think that power structures do abuse children, do cover it up, and do things that are so unimaginable that the average person cannot comprehend what has actually gone on, are in for a shocking expose. But first, I'd like to remind everybody that we are a truly independent news organization because of you guys. So please go to wearechange.org/donate, make that donation, support our work if you think that reports like this one are important. Now, although this report details decades of abuse, there are other whistleblowers that have been saying this has been going on for centuries. And quite frankly, any apology by any authority figure such as the Pope really is inadequate after you see the extent of this abuse, not in just this country, but look what's going on in Chile right now.
Chilean Catholic Church Archbishop Ricardo Asati was summoned by prosecutors to answer questions this week. He's not a witness, but the target of an investigation into a cover-up of sexual abuse of children and adults by the clergy. The church's sex abuse scandal continues to shake Chile as prosecutors investigate not only the abuse, but also the cover-up by the church's hierarchy. All 34 of Chile's bishops offered their resignations in May.
This press conference was almost 1 hour long and began with some detailed accounts of adult survivors of sexual abuse. And really, folks, their stories are so horrific, I'm not sure that we can play them all here. However, one woman was abused as young as 18 months old, and an 83-year-old gentleman still suffers from the abuse he received as a child today.
The day I met him, I was around 18 months old. I was in my diaper, and I ran out and ran right to him. Just think, like, the word God makes me think of him, and I just...
Who would have believed me? A priest in 1948 or 47 would abuse you? Do that? Never heard of such a thing because they covered it up. These are people that these priests ruined their lives, and they still, at 83 years old, still affects them.
Now, in this report, it was also detailed that child pornography was being made and child prostitution took place, in which other people would come in and rape these children for a fee to the priests.
An intense legal battle has played out between my office and individuals who have concealed their identities through sealed court filings. These petitioners, and for a time some of the dioceses, sought to prevent the entire report from ever seeing the light of day. In effect, they wanted to cover up the cover-up. They sought to do the same thing that senior church leaders in the dioceses we investigated have done for decades: bury the sexual abuse by priests upon children and cover it up forever.
And let's not forget, the majority of these people were never charged before their deaths. Many of them were moved around, and even the current Archbishop of D.C. is accused of covering up these abuses while he was in Pennsylvania. Now, anybody who's been following my work will find that this is not really new information, and I've done several exposés showing that this is not an isolated incident. In fact, right now on Netflix, there is a series called The Keepers, in which a very similar situation is going on in the Baltimore area, And of course, this type of abuse is not just exclusive to the Catholic Church. There is currently a similar scandal going on with the abuse of children with a Jewish rabbi. And Channel 4 in the UK did a large-scale expose of London's Orthodox community and how they were not only participating in child sexual abuse, but covering it up.
Our investigation has uncovered shocking evidence of what this can mean for victims of child sex abuse. Our undercover filming reveals how some Haredi rabbis can explicitly forbid these victims from going to the police.
The police also cannot actually. Police is not so. You should anger. It cannot lead to the police.
And now, even more recently in London, we have what the media has dubbed the Muslim grooming gang scandal.
2 girls in care reported they'd been repeatedly raped by a group of older Asian men. The girls were aged 14 and 15. The girls described being driven into Newcastle, where they were plied with alcohol and cocaine before being raped and beaten by several men.
In which the infamous Tommy Robinson reported on this outside of the courthouse and was swiftly arrested, then jailed for months.
The United Kingdom has become a mere shadow of the nation that gave us freedom of speech, freedom of the press, a host of other rights that we take for granted but probably should not take for granted. Nobody knows that better than Tommy Robinson. In May of this year, he was arrested for attempting to cover the trial of a sexual grooming gang in the UK for speaking out loud on the sidewalk. He was taken to prison with barely any time to muster a defense. He was tried and sentenced to 13 months in jail. Now, after more than 2 months behind bars in solitary confinement, during which time he was attacked by journalists in the UK. Almost nobody defended him. But tonight he has been released on bail after winning an appeal.
And frankly, folks, no matter where you stand on this issue, I believe that although many of these people were prosecuted successfully, their punishment did not fit the crime and their sentences were extremely light. Now, this, of course, leads people to look at the Muslim world and the Middle East as well, and especially Saudi Arabia and Afghanistan, where this type of child abuse also goes on. And in Afghanistan, our soldiers are often told to turn a blind eye.
U.S. soldiers and Marines were being told and are being told to ignore known sexual abuse of boys by Afghan allies. Now, the New York Times is reporting that commanders in the Afghan army have been sexually abusing young boys, sometimes even on American bases. Soldiers and Marines have faced discipline and even had their careers ruined for simply speaking up. One Marine, Lance Corporal Gregory Buckley Jr., was shot to death in 2012 on a base in Afghanistan. His father believes his son's reporting of an incident led directly to his death.
But let us not forget that this is not just about religion. In fact, in Abu Ghraib, it was revealed by Seymour Hersh that not only did our soldiers sexually abuse children in that prison, but they videotaped it as well.
And about the 3rd or 4th day, he said, and let me tell you about that prison, Abu Ghraib, which I'd read stuff about. He said, my friends' wives and daughters are writing and saying, you must come and kill me because I've been defiled. You know, in that part of the world, they deal in shame. We deal in guilt here in this part of guilt and denial here. But they dealt in shame. And they said they've been defiled. The GIs have done things to them. I'm not sure to what extent. And you've got to come and kill me. And then I heard about photographs. And then I heard that CBS had some photographs. There had been a report written, a secret report. And once I got that, I got it. I got the report written by a brilliant officer named Antonio Tagubo, who was fired over it.
You see, it seems as though any time a group of people become unaccountable, have godlike power over somebody else, this type of child abuse, this type of revolting sexual abuse occurs again and again and again. And that's why I think it should be no surprise that we have seen similar scandals going on not only in politics, but Hollywood as well over the last few decades.
And if Washington doesn't have enough to talk about these days, the Washington Times reported today that unidentified White House aides in the Carter, Reagan, and Bush administrations now are being investigated for using the services of a call boy ring.
Had me over to the house of where these perpetrators in this ring kind of basically started. They pull me away for their threat sessions, threat after threat after threat. At the house it was, I mean, I've had drugs put in drinks, I had liquor poured down my throat from being, where there were rules in the house of no swimsuits, no clothes out by the pool area. I was raped numerous times in that house by numerous individuals, various types of sexual abuse, all throughout that house.
The bottom line is, the majority of us in society realize that this is the worst type of criminal behavior. So it is upon us to expose this behavior and hold these people accountable with tougher laws against them that will put them away for life if they are found sexually abusing children. The time is now to go after the power structure, because if we don't, this type of behavior will continue across the board in places of power. As always, if you like this video, please hit that like, share, and subscribe button. Follow me on Twitter @JasonBermas, and folks, be the change you want to see in the world.